This is Unstructured.
Hey, everybody. Today I am beyond myself honored to have who I consider a podcasting legend now, Alex Lindsay. Now, Alex is significant to me because I started listening to podcasts on an iPod. Imagine that, with the spinning wheel and everything. And one of the first guys I listened to was Alex Lindsay on the show MacBreak Weekly. Now, I've been listening to Alex now for on and off probably 11 years.
See, now I feel old. 11 years. How could I be doing that for 11 years?
Well, you kind of go in and out too. You're not always on the show. You're definitely one of the regulars, but I know you've taken some times in between.
Yeah, what we started obviously doing a lot of podcasting. I got excited. I was working with Leo a lot. I was on the Screensavers with Leo back when it was still TechTV.
Oh, okay.
So I was a regular on that, first on Screensavers and then on Call for Help. And then I actually went, when Leo moved to Canada to do his work, not moved, but relocated for a week each month, I would go up there and I would just go in for a day because they were recording 4 shows each day.
Oh, wow. So
my weekly episode for Canadians was me going for one day and just recording 4 episodes. And so I went up with him. So when Leo started getting into podcasting, it was something, obviously we were doing a lot of video production and it was something that I was really interested in. And so we started a bunch of podcasts and most of them have not survived, except for MacBreak Weekly, which I handed off. I started it with Leo and then told Leo, you should just take this. And I knew it'd be much more successful under his wing than it would be under mine. And a lot of our production today is really, for a lot of companies. And so it's oftentimes I have to disappear for weeks on end to work on one project or another. So I'm really glad that Leo runs it each week with or without me.
That's awesome. I did not realize all that. And it's funny because I actually watched Leo back in ZDTV days.
Yep.
And a little bit into TechTV. Then I couldn't get it anymore between moving or whatever. It wasn't available on my cable network. And so I was really bummed out. And then it became G4 Tech or something. And it was kind of garbage.
So yeah. Once it got bought, it kind of went downhill from there. And it was, it was such a great, incredible experience. It was one of those things that was kind of serendipitous. The Pixel Corps had started, we were training people. So the Pixel Corps kind of began as this, I had this idea. I finished working on Star Wars and at ILM, and I was like, I can train everybody to do this. Like everybody could, I'm using a Mac. I can just do this, on a home computer, and everybody can do it. And I'm just going to train the world to do visual effects. That was my big idea. And the problem really got into was, it started with literally you could just show up at our office on Mondays. Mondays were graphics nights, and I was going to show something, and some other people would show a couple things that were within the Pixel Corps. And the Pixel Corps really consisted of between 5 and 10 people would show up every Monday, about an hour and a half before the graphics night, so like 5:30. And I would sit around and go, okay, this is the Pixel Corps. We're going to learn how to do media. We're going to take over the world.
All right.
Yeah. And so, so we were like, this is what we're going to do, and so then everyone like, okay, we're ready. And so then they would just show up. And then the next week, some people would not come back, and it didn't cost anything. People just show up and they get the same, hour and a half of me saying, we're going to all learn video. We're going to take over the world. And so anyway, so it just kind of built up organically. Once we got to about 200 people, I was like, I might have to actually charge for this because I can't manage,
Right.
we're paying rent and things. And so we started charging $50 a month because we just made it up. I was like, well, let's try $50 a month. And almost everybody signed up. And there was like 50 people that were like, this is crazy. And 150 people said, that's fine. And so then we started doing it, and then we made it, and that was fine. And we built teams that were working on different things and everything else. And in the middle of all of that, one of the people that came was someone who worked at TechTV. And and Peter said, have you ever thought about being on TechTV? I mean, and I was like, I don't even know what TechTV is. Like, I didn't know at the time. I didn't know what TechTV was. I haven't watched cable. I haven't had cable for a long time. Since the late 90s. And so I was completely out of the, when I worked at Lucasfilm, I didn't have any, I didn't have any cable where I lived. I know that sounds crazy, but I had a very high tech job, and almost the cabin, literally I didn't have central heat. And so, which was great. You'd go and you'd be in computer land all day, and you go home and you chop wood literally to keep the place warm. And it did have electricity, which was good, but it didn't have any central heat. It just had a wood stove. And so but it was 3 miles from the ranch, which was just nice because I could get to work quickly. And so anyway, so Peter said, he said, "Do you want to go and be on the show? I'm sure I could get you on as a guest." And I was like, "Sure." And I was super nervous, because I'd never been I've been on a lot of radio. I grew up as a host on radio show, so so I spent a lot of time on radio, but not on TV. And I had never seen TechTV, and so they gave me some VHS tapes that I watched, and I have to admit, when I watched it first, I thought it's a little corny. But it was, I was like, but I'll give it a shot. And I remember practicing for a week, trying to make sure that I got it just right. And trying to fit into 7 minutes was, like anything complicated, was difficult. And I went on and, didn't screw it up. I mean, when I look back on it, I was kind of embarrassed at how quickly I was talking and how I did everything, but I'd never done it before. And it was just such a great experience that, fortunately, they had me come back a couple more times, 50 or 60 times, and I got
a couple of few.
Well, and it evolved, like I was doing kind of visual effects how-tos, and then Bert Monroy was the other person they brought on that did Photoshop, and Bert's amazing. And what's funny is I actually learned Photoshop from Bert, so it was funny to have Bert on TechTV because I was like the next generation down, because I had learned it from him and then used that to get into Lucasfilm, and so. Oh, wow. And he had been at Lucasfilm, so or at ILM, and so it was just this odd circle of us being on the show, and then I was able to really practice doing it, and so I figured out that you shouldn't do something that's 7 minutes long. You should do something 3 minutes long because Leo's going to ask you a lot of questions, and so you'd simplify it, and then you would do other things, and so all of that.
Does that help though? That Leo asks the questions, so that way.
Oh yeah. That's the job of a host. That's what you're doing now. Well, but the job for a host, I think, is when someone goes too deep into the weeds, the job of the host is to pull them out of the weeds. And when they don't say enough, the job of the host is to pull it out of them. And that's really the only thing a host does. Is just shut them up when they're saying too much, that going down some rabbit hole, and pull it out of them when they're not covering that piece. And Leo is the best in the world at doing that. I mean, he's just, I'm always amazed at his ability to just, I mean, he's, in my opinion, kind of my mentor, and not so much that he gives me a lot of advice. It's just that being on the show, I learn a lot about how to do a show, watching him kind of manage that process.
How to do a read too. My God.
Oh, he can do a single. I will say I used to be able to do single reads as well as Leo when I was in radio, and I did it every day. But when I fill in for him, I realized that part of my brain is just not there anymore. I mean, because there's kind of this there's this weird, when you do a read, what you're doing is there's a short-term memory thing that you do. It's kind of like playing the bagpipes or the didgeridoo, where you're pulling in information, you're holding it just for a second, buffering it, and then pushing it out your mouth. And like when you do a read, a lot of times, like, you have to get really good at, your eyes are actually a line ahead of what your mouth is saying. And your brain slowly gets good at doing that. And that's how you get a good read that has great expression, and because you're actually buffering it in your head to allow you to figure out how you're going to say something while you're doing it. And it was something that I got coached on early on, because I wasn't good at it when I was 19, when I started on radio. But one of the radio hosts, was like, okay, this is what you got to do. You got to learn to read ahead, so you get good at it, but it is something that, it's a muscle that if you stop using it, it atrophies a lot.
I never knew that that was the exact technique. That's really good information.
It makes it easier. It's just harder. It's hard to get doing it at first, but you have to get yourself a couple words, 8 or 10 words ahead of your mouth. And then your brain has enough time to think about how you're going to express it and what you're going to do. But it is like, it's like a bagpipe or a didgeridoo. You're doing something that your brain isn't built for.
Wow. Okay. So you really have to practice it, I'm sure, a bunch.
When you do reads, you just practice it. You just get better. You get 1 word ahead, 2 words ahead, 3 words ahead. You just keep on, getting good at it, and your brain will slowly learn to buffer the text.
Well, while we're in this territory too, and you had mentioned Photoshop, it's not many people who have a unit of currency named after them.
Yeah.
How did the Alex come about?
It was just literally, it was a single comment. Like I don't know how this whole thing became, got out of hand. I literally, in one show, it was just, we were talking about how much software should cost, professional software, not consumer software, but we were talking about how much a good price for, and I think at the moment we were talking about Maya, and I said that Maya was too expensive, and they shouldn't charge as much as they're charging. And so I just said the right number is the price of Photoshop. Everybody has Photoshop. It's a reasonable price for it. It's $700, $699 or whatever. It was like $700. And so Leo just was like, oh, that's how much you think it should cost. And then the next thing you know, we were to find it someday. But there was one original conversation where I was talking about the right number for a professional product is $700 because that's what Photoshop is. And somehow it went from being a Photoshop to an Alex. And so I didn't have any part of it other than it showed up in my Wikipedia page, and I was like, "What?"
Well, you famously seem to pick the most expensive toys to share on the show. At least did for a while.
Well, I do. I try to vary it. So sometimes I'll go through kind of a stage of things that are inexpensive or cheap. But the reality is that I spend a lot of money on equipment, and it's different when you're doing it professionally than it is when you're buying something for yourself. I mean, I don't buy myself things that are that expensive. I don't have that kind of money. So, but I do buy stuff for work that is expensive, because when you're using something that's generating revenue, it becomes much more important to have it be reliable and work well and sound good and look good, and so that cost is it may seem it's a lot for a consumer. It'd be a lot for me, but it's not a lot when you're talking about using it over and over and over again. And so and we've been very fortunate. The cost of production has gone way down. So even though those things look expensive, they are a fraction of what they used to be. I buy I have a lot of Blackmagic switchers, and those things cost anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 or $6,000 each. The first switcher I bought was a Panasonic switcher that cost, I think, $26,000, and it does nothing compared to the Blackmagic switcher. And so and the big switchers in the trucks that we rent are $250,000 each. Now they do more than the Blackmagic switcher. They might be 8 MEs, and there's a lot of complexity to them and everything else. But the point is that in the production world that I live in, I'm actually not spending that much money. But compared to consumer solutions, it's definitely a lot of money.
Now, is it meant to also be maybe a little aspirational? Like what people are striving to become, more professional, better?
Yeah, I mean, I think
above.
It's just that I think that a lot of people don't in the professional area. A lot of people just don't know what's possible. So they hack things together because they don't know that there's a better product out there that can do it. So I don't know if it's aspirational as much as just saying, hey, there is actually a really good tool for this. I like, for instance, my mic right now. Maybe your mic. I'm not sure what you go into the computer with, but I use a USB pre. For my input, and it's just it's not cheap,
right?
But it's and I'm now moving to a mix pre, which is even better than the USB pre, and the mix pre is it'll record locally, and it's got a much better preamp, and it's got a bunch of other bits and pieces, and so it's an incredible little box, and it's $600 or something, so it's expensive in that sense, but it's always going to work, and you're going to sound great. And if you're using it once a year, it's not worth it. If you're using it every day, it's pretty awesome.
Speaking, talking shop on that, do you guys all double end your shows when you record MacBreak?
No, MacBreak is what you WYSIWYG. It is they record the program. They don't do any ISOs on it. If it falls apart, they'll edit down, but they don't do it. When I do radio style shows, when we used to do This Week in Media, which we may turn back on sometime soon, we definitely double ended everything. That's a big, and we're planning to, as we move forward with some of the radio shows that we're hoping to release late this year, early next year. We plan to use, for instance, mixed pre's on all of them, and then you just hit record. and just double in.
Like the tool we're using right now is called Squadcast.
It's really cool. I haven't seen it before. Like I was like, like when I looked at it, I was like, this is pretty awesome. And it does.
We're actually double ending.
Yeah, that's cool.
At a 16-bit wave. So, and that's why I was asking. Is I managed to find a way to have a tool to double end.
Yeah.
Dynamically.
Yeah, I like it. I web pages always scare me. So, but I'm very impressed with the quality of what we're using right now. So it's cool. I'm taking notes.
I'll let the developers know.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So going back to your story, you went from TechTV, and what happened to TechTV? I mean, it seems like it just.
I have no idea. They didn't make enough money. That turns out to be the end of most companies, is that you don't make enough money. So I don't. It's a tricky business. With cable, especially in that area, and I can't say that I don't have enough inside knowledge to know what happened with TechTV. Just that it wasn't making enough money and it got sold.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
a shame. I loved it. I almost feel like maybe it was a little ahead of its time.
It might have been, yeah. And I think that the one of the problems that it had was that, it really belonged on the web and it was stuck in TV. And so you have to deal with getting subs at all these different cable networks, subscribers.
Right.
And so you're trying to get, you have to get, because you're not trying to get people to come watch you. You're trying to get cable distributors to buy you, so the way that those work is, I don't know what they cost now, but back in the day, HBO would be $8 or $10 per sub, but the little stations like TechTV might be a quarter a sub or 10 cents a sub or 50 cents a sub. Mm-hmm. So you can't get individual people to subscribe. All you can do is run ads on the network that say, if you want to see Prime Sports Network, you need to, call your cable operator. And then the cable operator decides to buy as a package. And that aggregate is how you pay $40 a month and you get, this number of channels. And some of the channels, would go, their business model, like HBO's, was, getting subs. Other ones are free to air. And they do that because they want to make all their money on advertising. But that usually means they don't, the model that really worked for everybody was the fact that they could get everyone paying. And now they're going back to getting everyone paying by, it took a long time to unwrap those agreements. Mm-hmm. So you can't just, that's why we have to do that stupid code that you have to type in, like, is your cable provider Comcast or, all that stuff. That is because of those agreements that all the companies are slowly unwrapping, right? So that's what you can tell that they've unwrapped, because you can suddenly get their content, directly with an app. Mm-hmm. And so that unwrapping is slowly happening from the cable, which is obviously terrifying for the cable networks, because not the cable networks, but the cable providers, because, they're getting, disenfranchised.
That's why Comcast bought NBC, right?
Yeah, they have to get onto the content. They're trying to stay away from just being dumb pipes, which is not a place that they want to be. They don't want to be in a highly commoditized market.
Which I'd prefer they were, but that's just my personal preference.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, now they're trying to, obviously what they want to do is figure out how to make money with those pipes. And so that's where we get into the whole net neutrality battle, which is probably not as nefarious as it sounds. I mean, I know that we're all anti, we all want net neutrality and everything else, but what they're trying to do, and I'm not saying that I'm for it, but I understand where they're coming from, which is that, a huge portion of their pipes is being controlled by a handful of people that are making a lot of money on those pipes. So Apple and Facebook and YouTube and Netflix. And so what they want to do is they don't really want to charge us more money. They don't want to charge the little guy more money. What they want to do is they want to zero rate all of those organizations. So they want to make Apple and Netflix and everyone else pay them. And what they want to do is this is what they do want to do, is they want to take your subscription and say, you get 200 gigs, right? Because right now, I don't know, I use terabytes, from Comcast, because my whole I don't have a cable subscription. So everything we watch is data, and my kids sit there and watch YouTube, and my wife watches Hulu, and I watch, Netflix and Apple. And so we're all, pulling all this data in and going through terabytes. What they want to do is lower that down to 200 gigs or 300 gigs, but zero rate all those things that we use and push that cost back off to the folks that are generating that content. And that's the thing and so of course Google and Facebook and YouTube and Apple and Netflix don't want that. They don't want to do that. And it doesn't really, the functionally, we talk about the little guy getting pushed out because now only the big guys can do it. And the little guy's been pushed out for a long time. Let's be clear that, this is, without peering relationships, you have no chance of really competing, in live or streaming. So the little guys don't have that access that we think that they have. That's kind of a simplistic view of the process. And so it's one of those things. It's an interesting thing to watch. I kind of understand it. I actually have to say that I've gotten to a point that I don't know what I think. I'm not heavily pro or against net neutrality. I don't know how I feel because I really understand the business of on both ends.
Right. And I'm sure there has to be a balance in there somewhere.
Well, the balance is that we'll all go somewhere else. I mean, the thing is that these, I guess what I feel the balance is for these cable operators is that they are not the big game in town. There are 5 large companies, the 5 largest companies being Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Facebook, that if they decided that this isn't working for them, they could crush these cable companies or buy them at any point in time with cash. So the evening thing is it can only get, it can't get that bad because these guys, the reason that we have the kind of speeds we have right now is because Google started rolling out fiber and threatening to, change, it wasn't going to happen without Google, and so Google doing that is what had pushed AT&T and pushed everyone else to provide this Comcast to provide really fast internet because they folks like Google were going to run them over otherwise, and that would just come back.
Well, that's what I want is more competition. It's a very highly regulated market.
Yeah,
and I can tell you personally, I've suffered for a long time with you could have Cox and have cable service, or you can have nothing. And if you want internet speeds, you're stuck with one provider. Finally, Fios moved into town with Verizon, so at least I have 2. And you know what? Cox has gotten a whole lot more polite.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens with competition, and so it'll be interesting to see how 5G adjusts a lot of that. For those of us living outside of major metropolises, probably won't affect us anytime soon. So it's going to be what it is. But for folks that are in the cities, 5G could make a big difference because, what these folks are looking at is the ability to provide high bandwidth, low latency so basically T-Mobile is now going to be able to get into being a cable provider. And awesome. And so we'll, like all of, and AT&T and Verizon, but they're all fighting each other for those, that distribution in a way that you couldn't do before. And so but the problem with 5G, of course, is it'll be the most, and this is part of why they want to get rid of net neutrality, is 5G will be the most expensive rollout in the history of the world. It's so expensive because you have to put nodes up every 250 feet. I mean, these are really small waves. And so they, they'll get blocked by people, so it's not the kind of wave lengths that we're used to working with. And so we're most likely going to see them propagate in venues first and then slowly move to in metropolises and then out, but the hinterland is not going to see 5G anytime soon, which
I don't know if we necessarily miss it. I mean, we've already gotten to a tipping point. I don't know if you've ever seen this cartoon, but I thought it was hilarious, and it was talking about early days with 3G and Edge, where it's God, I got to get to my Wi-Fi so I could download this. Right. But now I find myself turning off the Wi-Fi and getting LTE because the stupid thing's not loading.
I do the same thing. I do that in my office right now. I got a problem with one of the AP in the insert studio that I'm in right now there's something wrong with it. I haven't rebuilt it yet, and it's turn off the Wi-Fi. And
that's how far we've come. I mean, think about that.
Yeah, no, it's come a long way. The only thing is I get these warnings from AT&T saying, "Hey, you've used 20 gigs to this month." So the only reason I really use Wi-Fi is to keep under my cap.
Yeah, well, obviously, the hounds are after you. You're like, but wait, I'm internet famous. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, no, it doesn't help as much as you would think. I'm not internet famous enough.
So after TechTV, you did the stint in Canada, sort of, but then how did MacBreak Weekly come about? I know you did MacBreak.
Well, MacBreak was the beginning of that, and we really and I can't remember whether we started MacBreak Weekly before or after MacBreak, but we had this idea of doing MacBreak, and the idea was just, let's do a podcast about Apple. I like it. I like Apple. I like Apple stuff, so it seemed like a fun thing to talk about. It wasn't the same thing as what Leo was already talking about on TechTV or on Twit, and so it seemed like a good fit, and it was something I was passionate about. And really, all the podcasts we started, whether it was This Week in Media, Gear Media Tech, and the different Mac breaks, it was just things I liked. I was like, I'm just going to do shows about things I like, and so I can't say that I had a strong business reason for it, other than I just didn't want to do something I didn't like if I was going to do it for free. And so anyway, so we started, and the first thing we did was MacBreak, and that was, I think, in 2005, and it was with Emery Wells and Amber MacArthur and Leo and I, and so we went around Macworld and did little segments, that were within it about different things. So that was literally episode 1. And
that was video, though.
It was all video. That's right. Okay. And we had some stuff the fall before that, I think in 2004, where we were doing MacBreak minutes, which were like 1 minute little tips and tricks, and it didn't really go anywhere. So anyway, so it was just hard to produce. It was just I thought, we'll produce them on a Saturday for the whole month, and we didn't. So it just became a thing. And so this one we did, and then on that same week, we decided we recorded that live piece, and then we recorded a bunch of green screens, and that was the MacBreak video platform. And so it was shot in 1080p because I just bought this crazy camera, and from ILM was selling 2 of the Star Wars cameras, and so I bought one of them.
Oh wow! And
so it was a Star Wars camera. It was the only 444 1080p camera in Northern California. And so I bought it, and I was like, I'm going to shoot green screen, and it's going to be great. And so we shot that and Sal Segoyan came in, Amber was there, and Emery was there, and Leo was there, and we produced like 20 episodes or 25 episodes. And it was kind of this machine that we turned on. The problem is then after that, we didn't, the challenge was that the hardware that we had just wasn't powerful enough to really do all the high quality keying at any real length. I was used to doing green screens with, at 30 seconds each. Doing green screens at 15 minutes and 20 minutes was a lot of render time, and it was breaking, and there was all kinds of problems. And so while I was working on that, I had to put the second episode as me. There's a little video called The Road to 1080p. That was mostly, I don't know how to get the rest of it working, so I'm going to talk about what I'm doing. And so, because Leo was upset.
Cool.
Leo was upset with me because we had started something and I couldn't get another episode out, and so I was getting a lot of angry emails. And so anyway, so I got that out. And what's funny is that turned out to be the second highest viewed MacBreak we've ever done. And so it was really popular. The only one that was more popular was, we did one where I took the iPhone 3GS, the first one with video, and I put it on a shoulder rig and everything else, like literally the day that it came out, and Wired picked it up, and Wired crushed our servers. so it was millions of views back before millions of views was a thing. So it was kind of an interesting process. And so anyway, so we started doing MacBreak Weekly because audio was a lot easier than video, and we were still doing Mac breaks. Or we were at the time. We don't do them as much as we used to. We're thinking about it again.
Right.
Anyway, but we did a lot of the MacBreak weeklies, and I gave it to Leo almost from day one because I just knew that he would take better care of it, and I always felt like I could still do all my other Mac breaks, and I would have the advantage of having this giant show that I could talk about him on, and so Leo did much better with it than I ever would have, and so he's got we got a lot of listeners, and it's all Leo's fault and Lisa's fault.
Okay, so now you guys have gone through kind of some lineup changes. I think you started out with was it you, Leo, Scott, and Merlin?
It's been all over. I mean, we've had a lot of different people on MacBreak. I think Scott and Merlin were fairly regular. The only consistency has been really Leo and I, and then and even I dropped. Especially in our most busy years, I was somewhere in the world all the time, and so I was probably only on half the time or a quarter of the time. But yeah, Scott and Merlin were on for more regularly. But we also had, we had Amber MacArthur came on a fair number of times. We had a lot of different folks, Jason Snell from Macworld, and a lot of folks that are now at Apple that are hidden at Apple now. So it was it's been a great set of hosts. I do think that we settled into just, in my opinion, the perfect mix of people. It's just such a show that I enjoyed going to see. I think that each one of us represents something very different, and but we also really respect each other. So Renee is, really knows the insider, end of what's happening and so on and so forth. I kind of look at it from the business end of what needs to get, how to use the Mac. Andy comes from the consumer end, that really thinking about the, what the average Joe wants to do. And, Leo kind of keeps us all in order. And it's just kind of this, I just think it's such it's like a good band just kind of comes together, and it's, it takes a little while to sort it out, but I can't imagine a better group of people to do a show with.
Well, I think it's interesting too. The main lineup I remember for a long time was you, Andy Anako, and Leo, of course.
Right.
And then Renee came along. I think Renee is a fantastic addition. He seems to be on that. But what I find interesting is your opinions and views seem to be evolving over the years. Like
most likely, they better. Otherwise, we're not growing.
Right. Well, and it's almost become controversial at points. So Andy almost doesn't seem to care for Apple much anymore, or he's definitely turned a little more fickle toward them, and Leo as well.
I think we all have our moments that are, we all have our moments where we're pro Apple and anti Apple. I mean, there's definitely things that I'm probably the least anti Apple, but
Renee,
and maybe Renee, yeah, Renee's probably on one end and Andy's on the other, and then I'm kind of Apple leaning and Leo's kind of Android leaning, and so we're the two of us are probably closest to the center, and but all in all, I think that we just want to. I think it's good for the listeners to have us not be fanboys. And so when we think that Apple's doing something wrong, we need to say it, and it's not because Apple isn't perfect. They do a lot of things that we don't agree with, that I don't agree with. I'll talk about things that drive me nuts on the show about what Apple does. I mean, I hate the fact that Apple hasn't released a laptop that doesn't have a touchscreen, and I feel like they're doing it just because it would blur the line too much and it would actually slow down the pickup of iPads.
And Steve Jobs famously talked about the ape arm.
It is. It's just that what they miss if you're using a Surface, which I have, you can be typing and then you just want to circle something or you just want to draw something really quickly on something, and that interaction is the thing that is hard. Is that you're not going to sit there all day touching things. What you're going to do is you're going to work away, and just the ability to touch things or circle things or to annotate things is what you want, that you just can't do. And so, I end up in this kind of weird, I've gotten good at it, but it's still frustrating. I keep everything in the cloud, and I work in Pages and Keynote specifically because it all sits in the cloud and it easily integrates between my iPad and my computer. So, and I'm constantly going back and forth between the two. So when I think about a presentation, I start on my iPad and I just I just sketch, every slide. This is what I want to do. Then when I finish that, I then move it to the computer and I make it look pretty on the computer. But the problem is I was able to just kind of get a train of thought out, and now I can just fill it all in. But then when I want to think about it and add things, I look at it again on my iPad and I sketch things over top of what I already did. And I think about it and then I go back to the computer. There's like this back and forth, and I'm just like, I cannot believe I'm doing, every time I do it, I'm just like, I cannot believe I don't have a touchscreen on my computer. This is stupid, And so, but I can't believe it's not so bad that I actually go to using a Surface, but like I have a Surface that I use for things, but I don't want to use it all day.
I'm the reverse. I want a trackpad for an iPad. That would solve everything.
It would be useful.
Because that's what drives me crazy is I don't want to reach up all the time. If I'm going to type, cool, but I want to still be able to manipulate things around. So
no, I get that. Yeah,
that would actually solve everything to me.
Yeah, I feel like we're just in between. Sometimes I feel like there's some social engineering going on where Apple doesn't want us to go back to us old folks go back to the old way. Like my kids, they can use a mouse, but they find it to be like a little bit of a brick. I mean, they're just so used to they're so used to their iPad that they don't. The idea of having a mouse isn't that big of a deal to them. So it's kind of evolutionary.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point because you and I were born 2 days apart.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm July 8th, 1970.
No, where were you born?
Tucson, Arizona.
So was I. We might have been in the same hospital.
Oh, wow. St. Joseph's?
I don't know. I'll find out from my mom. I'm actually going to Tucson hopefully in a week or two.
That is
family
crazy
reunion.
Small world.
I don't think there was probably, back when we were born, there probably wasn't 2 major hospitals in Tucson.
No, I think there's TMC and St. Joseph's or something like that.
I'll find out. That's funny. We were probably in the same hospital. Yeah, I was born in Tucson.
Wow.
And I love Tucson. I don't get back as often as I have family there, and I just love being there. Not so much in the city, but in the outskirts where the ranch is and stuff. It's pretty awesome.
Well, I grew up on the northwest part of town. We got subsumed by Oro Valley.
Oh, right.
Property.
Yeah. So we're on it was Tanca Verde was where the ranch was. I think it's on the east, kind of southeast.
Other way.
Yep. Other direction. Yeah.
But wow. Okay. Small world. That's very cool. On that point though, it's interesting because the iPad seems to be quickly adopted by children and the elderly.
I notice that all the time.
All of us in between are wed to, a laptop and the mouse.
I think it's because both folks that are older and children didn't really ever get into the computer. So that, if you didn't ever have all of this that you're used to, then it's really easy just to, that's much easier and much more simple to do. If you have used the computer a lot and typed away and everything else, it's really hard to give all of that up. And I think that I think you're spot on. I think that is the pickup that we see.
Yeah, and us Gen Xers in the middle.
Exactly.
We're the smallest generation, I guess, so it makes sense on the scale.
And we're broken. I mean, like I started programming when I was 10 before we had typing lessons. And so I type medium fast with 3 fingers on each hand. And, and I can't touch type. I watch my wife and she's amazing. Like she types like 120 words a minute and just like, and I'm like, I can't do that.
Well, very cool. Now, to wrap things up, what do you think of the latest event? You have to be happy about the Mac Minis.
Super excited. I haven't got it yet. I have to admit, I don't pick things up immediately, especially when they're brand new. I kind of go, I'm going to let them release a couple first, So while I jump on the phone pretty quickly because we're reviewing it, and I'll probably get the iPad. The Mac Mini, I'd like to see them ship a couple of units to make sure that it's working okay. And definitely with the laptop. Anytime Apple has a new form factor, I find that I kind of want to let it settle in. So I'm giving the Mac Mini a little bit of time, but I'm super excited about the Mac Mini. We have probably 35 Mac Minis right now, and they're all old and they haven't been upgraded because there weren't any upgrades to have. And so we're really excited about the idea of being able to have that much power in a Mac Mini. So being able to do a lot more. We use them to glue a lot of things together. And so they're really useful for us. The iPad I'm super excited about, mostly the USB-C. The rest of the stuff is fine. But the USB-C means that we're now going to be able to take professional devices and tie them in. So, I imagine Blackmagic is going to give us a video input, straight into the iPad. Oh, wow. I wouldn't be surprised if we weren't streaming from our iPads. The iPad's processor is plenty fast to stream HD, possibly even 4K. So someone's going to build something that's cool. I don't know. I don't have any inside information. I'm just saying that all the tools are there. It seems like physics at some point.
I mean, they're scary powerful.
Yeah. I mean, you're not. It's getting to the point where you kind of feel like Apple's making whatever they had a gleam in their eye about what they were going to do, and they finally are getting to that point. The iPad is what the iPad was meant to be. This is the first one. I think the rest of them were all kind of like working its way there. This is the first real iPad, and the watch. This is the first watch, and the phone.
I was going to bring that up. The watch seems like they're finally.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I don't know what it was about it. I think it's the more complications or whatever. But I found that the rest of the other. I have all the other watches, but they were better than what I had before. Which is, I had a good watch. I had a Citizen, Navahawk or whatever, and so I was really happy with it. But having the ability to have time, the alarms and timers and tie in if I wanted to other things, it was just enough to keep having the watch, right? It wasn't great. It was just better than the other ones, right? And there was something about this one that went over that crest where I was like, oh, I love this watch. I love having it. I love using it. I use and there was something about having more options on my, on what I'm looking at and how I'm managing it that just worked. And so that last little 5% or 10% really made a difference for me. And I think the phone is largely the same way.
Yeah. The only thing I have left on the watch is I'd like to see the Sapphire drop to the Sport.
A what?
I'd love to see the Sapphire face be available in the Sport versus having to pay the couple $100 extra. Once it hits there,
I just have the Sapphire. I mean, I don't have the Sapphire. I have the Sport because I'm just like,
same here.
I'm going to replace it again, over and over and over again. So why bother? Now I also wish it was in stereo. See, this is my stereo camera. Red camera. It's my Android stuff. So, but I like stereo. So
that's cool.
A lot of people say the cameras, this camera is silly, but it's stereo. You're taking stereo pictures. That's all I got to say.
Well, you have all the cool toys, so that's awesome.
It's funny when you buy something from Red. The great thing about it is you forget that you bought it. It was like so long ago. It was like a year ago that I bought it. On the first day that they announced it, I was like, oh, I'm going to get whatever phone Red's doing, and then it just shows up in the mail, and you're like, what is this box? And then you open it up, and you're like, I got a new phone.
Do you get nailed by Indiegogo and Kickstarter campaigns that you contribute and forget?
I got nailed a couple times, but mostly I early on I put money into stuff that either didn't work or didn't work the way I wanted it to, and was goofy, and I just stopped. I don't do any Kickstarters or Indiegogos. I don't invest ever because it's just I don't think I ever got something that I was excited about, except for the Glyph, the little iPhone holder.
Oh, yeah.
That I loved. There's been nothing else that I've ever gotten from Kickstarter that I was glad that I did.
Well, sometimes the simplest things are the coolest things.
Yeah. And my whole thing now is I just go, I'd rather just wait. We'll see how they do, and I'll pay more when it works. And I don't need to get into I'm going to save $10 2 years from now. I just like, I'll just wait. I've become a curmudgeon about it just because I didn't pick well.
Oh, I can understand that. So, what's coming next for Alex Lindsay?
Well, we're probably doing more of what we're doing. So we do a lot of production, a lot of figuring out. What we're really spending a lot of time on right now with our clients and with our plan is really thinking about the future of live. What does live look like as we move forward? And how do we create a meaningful conversation with a lot of people? So and because conversations are kind of everything, if you're we're having a conversation, see? But imagine this being, the next step of this is you and I are having this conversation, but it's then being broadcast live to thousands of people. Mm-hmm. How do we take their questions and how do we make them feel part of that experience, and how do them really part of the experience? Not like, hey, we've got a tweet, but really have them engaged in that conversation, in a real time way and in a meaningful way. And so a lot of our R&D is really trying to play with that idea. And I think that it is the future of TV, that we're going to, in the same way that we kind of move to social, there's this conversation that I think is coming, which is that we're going to have we're going to have shows that are really all about reacting to the audience and not necessarily, just kind of touching on the audience here and there. And when we get used to those kinds of shows, I think that we're going to have a hard time watching broadcast.
It kind of makes me think of improv.
a little like improv. It's a much different. It's just a whole different beast when you start thinking about having these conversations, these large conversations. It requires a different kind of host. You can't read off a teleprompter. You have to know your subject matter. You have to be interested in that, and you have to be authentic. And these are not all things that you find in a lot of hosts. And so it's a challenge it really changes the nature, and it changes who's going to be successful, I think. So it's really interesting. I think that's, we're spending a lot of time, having that, kind of in that conversation with a lot of people. And it does feel like there's something there, and it's really hard to do. It's not expensive to do. It's just hard. So which we like hard things.
Well, and I think that we're getting to a point where the youth coming up will help crack this, because you and I still have antiquated references that we tie things to. Like we have a habit of thinking of podcasting like radio, or at least my generation. Mm-hmm. And somebody else pointed out, I thought it was brilliant, that we shouldn't be using radio as an analog for podcasts. We should use a bookstore as an analog. And that busted my eyes wide open. I was like, yeah, you're right.
Well, when we're designing some podcasts that we want to do, like relaunching This Week in Media, and we're definitely focused on live. So it will be a podcast, but we won't do any that aren't streaming somewhere. Because we want people part of the show will be the audience. It won't be just a one-on-one or three or four discussion, that we have to include the audience, and we want them to listen to it while we're doing it. Now, we may want to have a structured part of it that is going to be the podcast, and then we'll take some of the other parts. But the idea is there's so much energy. If you look at what we do with the Final Cut user group, virtual user group that Pixelcore does on our YouTube page. When we open it up to discussion, it just becomes this, like, an hour and a half just disappears, and the view times are huge, and so because people feel engaged, and we're just having a conversation, and they're asking us questions and having us talk about things that we never thought about talking about, but it's great subject matter, and we know how to talk about it. Now, I have to have great experts. I mean, the guys that are Steve and Mark and Mike, and those guys are all they are the best, at answering those questions. And you have to do that to make that work.
Well, and you guys kind of have been doing that with the chat room and things like that, haven't you, in the past?
We have. The chat room is a relatively inefficient way to do that. But it's fine for now, because there's not any better tools, but maybe someday someone will make better tools.
And I think they were trying that with Periscope, but I don't feel like Periscope has really taken off like they wanted. No,
the problem is that when you think about creating that conversation and having it become really large, it's fine when a couple hundred people are watching, but when you have thousands of people watching, there's a whole different way that you have to start managing those comments. And because it's, how do you really pull the diamonds out of the rough? Because most of the comments are the rough.
Oh, I'm sure. I wonder if it would be a moderator type of situation where you have different tiers or something.
Yeah, we've done that. We've built some pretty interesting tools in the past that allow you to have multiple moderators in the back end and kind of managing, culling through that process. And you let the computer do some of the work. It turns out it's not very hard to filter most of the bad stuff out. And then it's so the computer, you let AI do a little bit of work, and then back it up with humans. So then things float up, then they look, and then they elevate certain comments and things like that. Yeah,
so
with the tool that we've built for Facebook, from the time someone asks a question, it can go through one layer of computer filtering and 2 layers of human filtering and be on an iPad in 60 seconds. So that's kind of when you start playing with those kinds of tools and you start getting used to it, you can't really operate a Q&A session without it.
That's awesome. Where can people find out more about it, or is it all?
It's hidden. It's all internal. so it's
hire Alex there.
Yeah, I mean, we someday we'll turn it into a public tool. It's not something that we mean to keep secret. We just don't. It's so wonky that we're afraid that that folks will ask us a lot of questions and complain that this part doesn't work. We just know what buttons not to push. So
gotcha.
So it's not publicly ready, not because we're trying to hold on to it, just because we haven't cleaned it up enough to let a bunch of people use it.
Well, very cool. Now, Alex, this has been really a dream. And where can people find you?
The easiest place to find me is on Twitter. I mostly complain there, though. So you can, but just Alex Lindsay. I think I'm Alex B. Lindsay on Facebook, and I am, I think just Alex Lindsay on Instagram. I take the Instagram. I have all different things that I do all these things on. Also, if we are doing about once or twice a month, we do little trainings or mostly just Q&As on Patreon. So PickScore has a little Patreon site, so it's like $5 a month. And, I'll sit down or bring people in and we'll have Q&As. And so if you're interested in that, jump into that as well.
Oh, very cool. Hey, thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, the host of It's No Secret with Dr. T, which is a small business and marketing podcast. Each week, I interview business leaders who openly share the secrets to the massive success. It's No Secret with Dr. T will educate, entertain, and inspire you. Check it out. You'll find it wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can go to my website, tysonfranklin.com.
I did not grow up with very much money.
Money's energy.
Money is something that really scares me. You had about 60 grand in debt.
Money isn't the answer.
Somebody should just give me a lot of money.
My dream was to be the WWE wrestler, but you realize that your dreams change over the years.
Money is a tool. It's a key to a gate. And at the other side of the gate is the things that you really want to do with your life. It's the things that matter most to you. It's pursuing those values that make you ultimately happy.
Listen to Inspired Money at inspiredmoney.fm.